I have fallen for a man I should never have gotten involved with. In public, I call him uncle. When we're alone, he holds me tight. Ironically, he still carries the scent of another woman's perfume. Uncle, are you really getting married? He admits it without hesitation, completely ignoring the fact that I've been his lover for many years. His name is Christian Norris, a friend of my father's. Lainey, come here. As soon as I opened the door, I heard Christian Norris calling my name. He was sitting on the leather sofa in the living room, next to a woman with wavy hair and bright red lips. Christian had his right arm around her waist, a very intimate posture. I lowered my eyes and obediently walked over to him. Call her auntie. Christian's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Those words were like a dagger, stabbing straight into my chest. I bit my lip, unwilling to speak. The atmosphere froze, and finally, the woman tried to smooth things over. Oh, it's okay if you don't want to call me that. Lainey might just be too shy, no big deal. After the two of them whispered sweet nothings for a while, Christian went out to see her off. I changed into my pajamas and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth and wash up. Without warning, a pair of hands hugged me from behind. My hands paused instantly as I was washing my face. In the mirror, I saw Christian's face. Uncle, I called softly. He tightened his grip on my waist, as if trying to merge me into his body. Ironically, he still carried the scent of another woman's perfume. Black Opium, by YSL, commonly known as a man-killer scent. Christian leaned close to my ear. Why didn't you say anything just now? I turned on the faucet and met his gaze in the mirror. Are you really getting married? A chilling coldness swept across my skin, mixed with his response. Her father is my biggest business partner. Marrying her is a win-win situation. Right, I almost forgot. He's a businessman. A businessman who only does things that benefit him. I mustered all my strength to pry his fingers off me, one by one. Christian seemed surprised by my actions. I looked at him, feeling my strength drain away, and spoke weakly. Christian Norris. Let's end this. I first met Christian when I was 15. At my father's funeral. He was dressed in black, walked up to me, and wiped away my tears. His expression was stern, but his actions were very gentle. I choked out, Who are you? He paused. My name is Christian Norris. I'm a friend of your father's. After that, he took me into his house. At first, I was very reserved and couldn't relax in anything I did. But Christian treated me very well, really well. In terms of food, clothing, and daily needs, he never let me down. Except for makeup. In high school, some girls in my class secretly wore makeup. I was tempted and used the pocket money Christian gave me to secretly buy a lipstick. But as soon as I put it on, I was caught by Christian, who had just come home. He stared intently at my lips, making me shiver. I'll go wipe it off. Stop. He took out a napkin, wet half of it with water, folded it in two, and came to me. The cold touch made me want to retreat, but the wall behind me left me no room to move. Christian seemed to be sculpting a piece of art, wiping very carefully, not leaving a trace. When he finished, he said lightly, You're not allowed to wear makeup next time. You should be a clean girl. I remembered that sentence for many years. He said I was a clean girl. But it was so ironic. He loved those women with heavy makeup and hot bodies. But he wouldn't let me touch makeup at all. So, does he hate me? Even in my dreams, I would see him and murmur, Chris, don't hate me, okay? Turning over, I continued talking in my sleep. Can you try to like me? Just a little. In a daze, I seemed to hear a okay. I must have been dreaming. How could I possibly hear Christian say okay to me? And so, after I grew up, I secretly loved him, becoming the most despicable person in the world. The day of high school graduation was also my 18th birthday. It was the first time in my life that I openly defied Christian's constraints on me. I indulged myself in the revelry of a bar, ignoring his incessant phone calls. When I stood at the door of the house, I finally sobered up. In the dimly lit living room, Christian sat on the sofa holding his phone, the glowing screen the only light in the dark night. You're back? I closed the door, leaning against the shoe cabinet, and softly replied, Christian put down his phone and got up to walk toward me. The sound of his leather shoes scraping across the floor deepened my fear. Melanie. His voice carried a tone of judgment. Christian cornered me, his hand touching my neck, then suddenly tightened his grip. The feeling of suffocation surged through me, and I struggled to speak. "Uncle, it hurts." Only then did he let go. I gasped for air, feeling as if I had narrowly escaped death. "You went to a bar?" The smell of alcohol on me was so strong that even though I had walked around outside for a long time, it had no effect. I did not deny it. "Do you know what kind of people go to nightclubs? Especially girls your age." Christian's words were like pearls, each one clear and precise, spoken in the calmest tone yet carrying the most venomous message. "Only those who sell themselves go there." In the silence, he released his hold on me, creating a distance between us. "Go take a shower, you're too dirty." He always held this superior attitude towards me, as if certain I would obediently comply. I spoke softly, "Then would you buy?" "What?" Christian didn't understand my meaning at first. I gathered all my courage, leaned into his chest, and hooked my arms around his neck. "If I sell, would you buy?" It was the most seductive tone I could muster with all my strength. Before Christian could respond, I kissed him directly. It was my first kiss, with Christian Norris. His lips were thin and cool, with a fresh taste. I tried to pry open his teeth but was pinned against the wall by his grip on my shoulder. "Melanie, are you crazy?" he almost roared. Seeing his furious expression, I suddenly felt a bit of satisfaction. This time, I had one. "Chris, I'm not obedient at all. I have never been the good girl you imagined, nor the caged bird you control. This is the real me. The me who has liked you for so long." Even many years later, I still remember that night. I finally broke free from rationality, and Christian, under my deliberate provocation, lost control as well. The blurred memories of everything swaying, the ultimate loss of control in body and mind, and the sweat dripping onto my collarbone. All the entanglements with him afterward stemmed from that night. I personally opened Pandora's box. "Hey handsome, you're here again? How long has it been, and you still haven't won over our boss?" The guy standing in front of me blushed deeply. His name is Carlos Albin, my college classmate. And the one teasing him is my employee, Riley. Because of Christian, I was never particularly good at social interactions, especially with guys. He always interfered with my social life, making it hard for me to have normal interactions with ordinary people. Carlos Albin was the exception. During our freshman year, he would always find ways to talk to me, sit next to me in class, and shamelessly invite me to watch his basketball games. Most of the time, I would respond perfunctorily. But he never cared about my deliberate indifference. After graduation, I rented a shop near the school and opened the dessert shop I have now. When Carlos found out, he started coming here every other day, sometimes not even talking, just ordering a tiramisu and sitting with me until closing time. Over time, all the employees knew that Carlos was pursuing me. This was already his third year of persistence. After teasing him, Riley went back to the kitchen with a grin, leaving us alone. I checked the bills, ignoring his presence. "Lainey, I bought movie tickets. Tonight." "No time." I interrupted him. Carlos held 2 blue and white movie tickets in his hand, then, "Next time." Riley came out with a tiramisu, hearing our conversation. She nudged my shoulder. "Go on, I'll be here tonight." "Why don't you go?" I glanced at her. "Are you that free?" She shrugged and didn't say anything more. Carlos found a quiet corner to sit in, lowering his gaze silently. I finished checking the bills when my phone's notification sound went off. I unlocked the screen. Norris Group president and the only daughter of Gasly Media announced their engagement today. In the accompanying picture, Christian was in a black suit with gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Kelly Gasly wore a white long dress that reached her ankles. She hooked her arm through Christian's, her head slightly leaning on his shoulder, smiling sweetly. My phone slipped from my hand, hitting the table with a crisp sound. Riley noticed something was wrong. She put down the cake she was holding and asked, "Are you okay?" I shook my head, my eyes fixed on the tiramisu in Riley's hand that hadn't been delivered yet. "I'll take it to him." Carlos seemed lost in thought. When I reached him, he was still in a daze. I placed the cake on the table in front of him. "Thank you," he said. "It's nothing." Carlos suddenly looked up at me, eyes full of disbelief. Before, I had never taken the initiative to talk to him, let alone bring him anything. This was the first time. The warm yellow light between us added a layer of warmth to the atmosphere. "Carlos Albin, Do you still want to go see the movie together? In 2014, the movie Fleet of Time was released and instantly became a box office hit. Carlos bought tickets for the very back row, right in the middle, for the 10 p.m. show. He thought that girls my age preferred youthful, painful, sentimental literature. It was clear he had done his homework in trying to pursue me. But he was wrong. I absolutely hated this type of movie. In the story, even if the male and female leads ultimately missed each other with regret, they always had those youthful memories and the innocent excitement of first love. Looking back years later, they might sigh with emotion, but they would never regret it. I was different from them. At the age when my heart first began to stir, I fell for someone who would never like me back, waiting for someone who would never wait for me. He never showed the male lead's care and protection for the female lead, or feared she might get hurt and cherished her like a treasure. He only spoke coldly, with indifferent eyes, never willing to share any warmth with me. Thanks to Christian Norris, I became someone afraid to love. So, I hated these kinds of movies. I hated their endings where they smile at each other and let bygones be bygones. Carlos noticed my distraction and thought I didn't want to watch the movie. He said cautiously, "If you don't want to watch this, we can change it." I didn't know what you liked, so I just bought a random show. Sorry. It's okay. I took the movie ticket from his hand, my fingertips lightly brushing his palm. Carlos's neck turned red at a visible speed. Let's watch this. At the end of the film, the girls in the cinema were crying all over. Girls with boyfriends cried in their boyfriends' arms, those without boyfriends wiped their tears alone, and some girls were questioning their boyfriends if they would cheat like the male lead in the movie. I didn't react much, but when we came out, Carlos saw my cheeks. "Lainey, are you okay?" Only then did I realize I had cried. While others cried immediately after watching, my delayed reaction took 10 minutes after leaving the theater to start shedding tears. I didn't know why I cried. Probably because I saw the female lead, in her confusion and revenge against the male lead, gave away her first time and had to abort a life that shouldn't have existed. That line was deeply imprinted in my mind. The female lead hugged the male lead, forcing a smile. "If this child were yours, how wonderful it would be." It was nearing dawn, and there weren't many restaurants open on the street. Carlos and I hadn't eaten yet, and more embarrassingly, my stomach growled at the worst possible moment while we were walking. The smell of a hot pot restaurant wafted over from the roadside. Carlos looked at me with a smile. "Want to have hot pot?" I nodded. There weren't many people inside the restaurant, and we sat near the entrance, ordering a half-and-half hot pot and a set meal for two. The steam spread around, filling our noses with the spicy aroma from the hot pot. I took a few bites of beef and started coughing from the spiciness. Seeing this, Carlos asked the waiter for a can of orange juice. Suddenly, my phone rang, and the screen lit up with a contact name. Uncle. I hung up the call. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. I hung up again. This happened repeatedly until Carlos said, "Maybe you should answer it. It might be something important." He never has anything important to tell me. I placed a slice of potato into his bowl. "Let's just eat." 10 minutes later, I saw a familiar pair of men's leather shoes. The owner of the shoes stood in front of me. Those shoes were a gift I had saved up for a long time to buy for Christian, secretly working part-time jobs. "Lainey, you really made us search high and low for you." Kelly Gasley scolded me without treating herself as an outsider. Her sharp voice made sure everyone in the hot pot restaurant could hear every word she said. "Chris has been going crazy looking for you, calling you nonstop, and it's almost 2 in the morning. If he hadn't installed a tracker on your phone, who knows when we would have found you. A girl like you shouldn't be out alone in the middle of the night." "What did you say?" The hot pot continued to bubble in front of me, and Kelly Gasley's words kept echoing in my mind. "If he hadn't installed a tracker on your phone." I looked up to see Christian standing against the light, wearing the clothes I saw on my phone earlier today. Sophisticated and ascetic. Only I knew he was a complete beast. I staggered to my feet, and Carlos, worried I might fall, quickly stood up with me, grabbing my arm. Christian's expression darkened. I spoke each word carefully. "Did you put a tracker on my phone?" He didn't answer my question, instead grabbing my other arm and pulling me forcefully to his side. "Let's go home," Christian said coldly. His grip was too strong for me to resist. Kelly followed us, and Carlos grabbed his coat, ready to chase after us. I mouthed to him, "Don't worry. Outside, it had started pouring rain, with lightning flashing across the sky and thunder rumbling. Christian yanked me into the back seat, shoving me inside. "You sit here." When there were other women around, I could only sit in the back. The passenger seat was never exclusively mine. I was getting tired. Christian seemed like he wanted to say something to me, but after a few seconds of thought, he didn't speak. He shut the car door and walked to the driver's seat. Casually, he glanced at Carlos. A look of disdain. He quickly looked away. Then he drove off. Christian deliberately drove fast, splashing water onto Carlos. An overly deliberate move. I wanted to roll down the window to apologize, but no matter how I pressed, the window wouldn't go down. In a fleeting moment, I met Christian's gaze in the rearview mirror. He gave me a warning look. I finally lowered my hand, leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes, and didn't want to interact with him at all. Carlos was a good person. He shouldn't be dragged into the mess of my life. Christian first sent Kelly home. At the entrance of the residential area, the two of them stood not far away, very close to each other. If I wasn't mistaken, they were kissing. I could see everything clearly from the car. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that Christian came back. I kept my eyes closed, so I wouldn't have to talk to him. "Lainey." I pretended not to hear. Christian called again, but I still ignored him. He got a bit angry. "Melanie." Only then did I slowly open my eyes and softly say, "What's up?" Maybe it was my gentle voice, but his anger dissipated significantly, and he asked, "Are you sleepy?" I responded with a hum. Christian didn't say anything more, but gradually increased the car's speed. 20 minutes later, we arrived home. To be precise, it was his home. After all, my short-lived father passed away when I was in my teens, entrusting me to his most trusted friend. Living under someone else's roof, you have to act accordingly. I opened the car door, feeling dizzy and lightheaded. Sitting in the car for too long made me feel suffocated and anxious, my mind not entirely clear. The underground garage was empty, and my footsteps echoed loudly. Then, Christian followed. We walked silently to the elevator, pressed the button, and entered the apartment without a word. Once inside, I changed into slippers, too tired to even wash up, just wanting to collapse onto the bed. My head was spinning badly. Just as I was about to reach the bedroom door, Christian called out to me, "Lainey." I gripped the doorknob, using the last bit of my strength. "Uncle, what's the matter?" Little did I know which word triggered him, but he strode forward, pulling me over and pressing me onto the living room sofa. This action made me a bit clearer, and I looked at his furious eyes, not understanding what was going on. "What are you doing?" I tried to break free from his hold, but it was useless. "What am I doing?" Christian seemed possessed, biting my earlobe, sending shivers through me. This familiar action reminded me of my 18th birthday. "Melanie, you smiled so happily at him, didn't you? What, eager to distance yourself from me and already found someone else?" Christian's fingers slid over me, pushing my shirt up to my chest. The touch was cold. "If he knew how dirty you are, would he still like you?" I thought of Carlos's dimples when he smiled. I thought of his persistence, how he kept reaching out to me despite my repeated rejections. Suddenly, I felt like I might not be worthy of him. Christian Norris. I didn't call him uncle. "I'm not clean, and you're no better. We are both devils fallen into hell, neither better than the other. Carlos is 1,000 times, 10,000 times better than you. You have no right to mention him." Christian suddenly gripped my waist tightly with both hands. "I'm dirty? Melanie, do you remember? You were the one who asked, if you sold, would I buy?" That night, on this sofa, in the same suffocating darkness, I said those words and did what I had always been afraid to do to him. I will never forget it. Christian pinned me down firmly. "Tonight, I'm buying you." His actions were rough, treating me like an object to be used at will. I bit my lip hard, trying not to make any sound. In the end, I heard Christian's low pant, accompanied by his whisper, "Melanie, you should be entangled with me for life. No one can take you away from me." I had a dream. In the dream, Carlos proposed to me. He held me in his arms, swearing to protect me for life and never leave me. I was immersed in his vows, unable to extricate myself. Suddenly, someone pulled me away. I tried to break free, begging Carlos to hold me tighter, but I saw an infinite disdain in his expression. "Melanie, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. What kind of person am I? Christian's voice sounded from behind. I told you not to provoke others. That voice of despair. Everything around me turned to nothingness. I fell into a bottomless abyss, the burning sensation spread throughout my limbs, and I could hardly breathe. No! I opened my eyes in fear, finding the surroundings still familiar, and breathed a sigh of relief. Christian embraced me from behind, his left hand tightly gripping my waist. In the dream, I couldn't breathe, probably because of his doing. Christian was awakened by me. He opened his eyes groggily, his voice hoarse. What's wrong? I replied softly, I had a nightmare. He got up, resting his chin in the crook of my neck, his warm breath spraying on my neck. What kind of nightmare? It has nothing to do with you. Let go of me, I need to wash up. Christian didn't make things difficult for me. When I got out of bed, I walked unsteadily. My collarbone and neck were covered with purple kiss marks, showing how crazy he was last night. Cold water splashed on my face, bringing back my thoughts. In the living room, Christian was sitting on the sofa in his pajamas, leisurely looking at his phone. As if the person who humiliated me last night wasn't him. I rummaged through the cabinets to find the medicine box, took out a small bottle from the deepest corner, poured out a pill, and swallowed it with hot water. What are you drinking? Christian asked me. Medicine. His brows furrowed. Are you sick? What medicine are you taking? I expressionlessly took a few more sips of water and replied, birth control pills. My tone was flat. Christian's fingers paused on the screen for a moment. After a while, he spoke hoarsely. How long have you been taking them? I sneered. Don't you know? How many times we've done it, I've taken it that many times. Christian threw down his phone and slowly came to me. He picked up the medicine on the table and rubbed it carefully. Then he raised his hand and threw it into the trash can. What are you doing? I hurriedly went to rummage through the trash can, but Christian held my body, making me unable to move. Don't take them anymore, it's bad for your health. I was stunned. I really couldn't believe these words came from Christian. Don't take them? If I get pregnant, will you marry me? I was taking a gamble. Gambling on whether Christian would say those words. Even at this moment, I still had a bit of hope for him. I thought, if he said he would, how should I respond? Should I immediately agree, or should I pretend to be reserved, maintain my last bit of dignity, and then agree? Unfortunately, I was wrong. Christian was silent for a long time before he slowly spoke. If you have the child, I can raise him. You don't have to be responsible for his life. I suddenly lost all strength. At 25, I finally understood that unrequited love is ultimately pathetic. He said I could get pregnant, have the child, and not care about the child, and he would take care of the child for a lifetime. But he was unwilling to say he would marry me. Or love me. The phone rang in the bedroom. I pried his fingers open and went back to the bedroom. Every step I took was on my shattered heart. The caller ID showed Carlos. I pressed the answer button. Hello? Lainey, you all right last night? Anyone could see what Christian did to me last night. I didn't want him to know about me and Christian, so I lied. I'm fine. That's good. After 2 seconds of silence, he said, Are you free today? I want to tell you something. Even over the phone, I could hear the tremor in his voice. I already guessed what he was going to say. Okay. Are you going out? Christian blocked the door, his eyes filled with inquiry. Yes. With whom? A friend. Which friend? A sudden surge of anger filled my heart. Do I have to tell you who I'm going out with? Do you have to interfere in my life? Tears rolled down, I coughed a few times, holding back my frustration. Let me out. Christian remained unmoved, his voice lowered. Is it that guy from yesterday? None of your business. I tried to open the door handle, but Christian suddenly leaned in, pressing his nose against mine. What's so good about him? He just graduated from college, has no money, no power. Everything you want, he can't give you. Lainey, think carefully. Besides me, who else can give you the life you have now? Christian's words were flawless, not only elevating himself but also trampling Carlos into the dirt. Yes, Carlos can't give me anything. Except his true heart. He can give me love. I met Christian's gaze, my eyes filled with sarcasm. Christian, he can give me love, can you? Inside, another thought was screaming. Chris, say you love me. As long as you say you love me, I won't leave. After a pause of more than 10 seconds, Christian suddenly lowered his hand. Lainey, whether you stay or go, it's your decision. He threw the dilemma back at me, as if I was the one in the wrong. Even now, he still wouldn't say he loves me. If he doesn't love me, why insist on keeping me by his side? I've had enough of this hunter's game. I changed my shoes, and before leaving, I whispered something almost inaudibly. Goodbye, Uncle. It was a farewell, even more so a final goodbye. I met Carlos at my dessert shop. Riley gave me a knowing look and retreated to the kitchen to wash dishes. Carlos called out, Melanie. His voice trembled. Actually, I knew what he was going to say, but at this moment, it's best if I don't speak. Carlos clenched his fists, as if making a firm decision. I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? When he said this, he didn't dare to look me in the eyes. This is probably the biggest difference between him and Christian. Christian can whisper sweet nothings to different women, never repeating himself, as if he offers his sincere heart to you. But he just passes through the flowers without touching a leaf. His feelings come fast and go fast. Carlos is the complete opposite. He doesn't know how to express himself, only using the clumsiest and simplest way to tell you he likes you and wants to be with you. Even his confession makes him blush. He is the one most suitable for me. Always favoring me alone. Carlos, I called. He was tense, his whole back stiffened. Yeah, I'm here. I shook the coffee cup in front of me, looking out the window. Outside, a few girls who looked like middle school students passed by, wearing school uniforms and ponytails, linking arms, chatting and laughing. I envied them very much. The setting sun cast its last glow into the room. The coffee spoon clinked against the cup, making a crisp sound. I want to know. Why do you like me? Why do you like someone as broken as me? And with such a dirty soul? Carlos obviously didn't expect me to ask this question. He lowered his head, seriously thinking, with a few strands of hair hanging above his eyebrows, which he didn't bother to fix. He looked adorable, like a high school student solving a difficult problem. I took a sip of coffee, waiting for his answer. Finally, Carlos looked up. This time, he didn't avoid my gaze. You might not believe it. Actually, on the first day of college, I noticed you. The second day, I was tossing and turning in bed, and all I could think about was you. By the third day, I was sure I had fallen for you. His tone was sincere, with no hint of pretense. Although it sounds absurd, I truly wasn't lying to you. I figured out in 3 days that I liked you. I was stunned. Carlos didn't notice my shock. Afraid I'd find it ridiculous, he continued to explain slowly. On the first day, I saw you at the freshman registration. Everyone else had their parents or friends with them, but you were alone, carrying 2 big backpacks, a bag, and a suitcase. At that moment, I wondered, how could such a small girl carry so much? On the second day, during military training, the instructor randomly picked you and insisted you show a talent. You sat on the stage and sang Dream Chaser. Before you started, I always thought your voice would be soft and sweet, like a southern girl's. But when you sang the first line, I was stunned. It was nothing like I imagined. Your voice was clear and powerful. On the third day, you got heatstroke during military training and collapsed on the ground, too weak to move. The instructor asked me to take you to the infirmary. I wanted to carry you, but you refused, insisting you could walk and not letting me touch you. At this point, Carlos chuckled softly. At that moment, I thought, why is there a girl who is so stubborn? Something that could be easily solved by admitting weakness, you had to insist on doing it yourself, making it hard on yourself. You probably don't know, that day, you walked slowly in front, and I followed you step by step. I still remember, you walked unsteadily, but you gritted your teeth and didn't let anyone help, almost spraining your ankle. At that moment, a very strange thought sprouted in my mind. I wanted to protect this girl. I didn't want her to get hurt again, didn't want to see her pretending to be strong, didn't want her to be alone. I wanted to be the one person by her side who would always favor, trust, and indulge her unconditionally. The red glow fell, and Carlos's eyes were burning. So, can you give me this chance? I felt a lump in my throat, unable to speak. He told me, in 3 days, he had fallen for me. And I had spent 10 years, yet couldn't get a single genuine care from Christian. A moth flying into the flame will eventually get burned. I thought, it's time to let go. I released the cup, gently placing my hand on Carlos's. Carlos, I have a secret. A secret I've kept for 10 years. If after hearing it, you still want to accept me, I took a deep breath. Then let's be together. I told him about me and Christian, and the nightmares that tormented me for countless days and nights. When it came to that night when I was 18, I thought for a long time, not knowing whether to tell him. The fragmented memories kept flashing back, and my emotions started to collapse. I had a relationship with my uncle on the night of my coming-of-age ceremony. It wasn't him who forced me, I initiated it. I thought my passion could change him. But he never took me seriously, only treated me as an insignificant bed companion. He didn't respect me, he humiliated me. He didn't love me. From beginning to end, it was all my wishful thinking. Recalling all the past with Christian, I couldn't find any moment worth reminiscing. The depression condensed in my chest, and I spoke with difficulty. Carlos, I'm not the clean girl you think I am. My life, my body, my thoughts, are all filthy things. Can you really accept me? I couldn't bear a second blow. I couldn't even imagine what I would do if Carlos knew all this and rejected me. But I had to tell him, it was an unchangeable fact. After I finished speaking, for a long time, Carlos didn't respond. I silently withdrew my hand from his. Time passed, I didn't know how long it had been, when I heard him say, "It is a bit dirty." One sentence shattered my heart, which I had painstakingly rebuilt, into pieces. I understand. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor, making a harsh noise. Carlos grabbed me, pulling me into his arms. My nose hit his chest, and I smelled a faint, clean scent. Just an ordinary laundry detergent smell. In stark contrast to the strong tobacco mixed with various perfumes on Christian. I didn't understand his meaning. Carlos took out a napkin, gently wiping away the tears on my cheeks, and smiled, "All right, no more tears, now you're not dirty." I felt like crying again. Seeing my tear-filled eyes, he sighed, wrapped his left arm around my waist, and patted my back with his right hand, comforting me, "Don't cry. No matter what happens, to me, you will always be you." I nestled in his arms, trying to relax my body. Feeling my softness, Carlos rested his chin on my head. "Finally," he said. "No matter what your past was like, I just want your future to belong to me." I decided to confront Christian. When I got home, the living room lights were on, but there was no one there. I heard noises coming from the bedroom. As I got closer, I realized it was the sound of a man and woman together. By the shoe cabinet, there was a pair of 10-centimeter high heels, next to them were the leather shoes I had given Christian. Without any expression, I went back to my room, changed into my pajamas, and headed to the bathroom. I heard voices in the living room, and then Kelly's surprised voice, "Lainey, when did you get back?" She ran to my side, her clothes disheveled, hair messy, and a strange smell about her. Kelly's face was flushed. You didn't hear anything, did you?" I spit out the mouthwash. "No." Christian came over at the sound of our voices, and in the mirror, our eyes met. It seemed like he wanted to say something to me. But in the end, he went along with Kelly's words, "I'll take you back first." Okay. After they left, the house returned to silence. I lay on the bed, and a message from Carlos came, "Are you asleep?" I replied, "Not yet. Get some rest early, don't think about random things." "Okay. You have a boyfriend now, so if you have any problems, make sure to contact me first, don't shoulder it alone, understand?" I could almost imagine his expression as he typed those words. Like an old cadre, advising me. I smiled and replied, "Got it." After chatting with him for a bit, a wave of fatigue hit me, and I closed my phone, ready to rest. The side of the bed suddenly sank, and a pair of hands wrapped around my body. Christian's nose pressed against the back of my neck, his hands becoming restless. "Uncle, I'm on my period today." His hands suddenly froze. Besides, wasn't that round just now enough? Did Kelly not serve you well? Christian thought I was jealous, and he explained, "I drank too much tonight, lost control, I didn't mean to be with her at home." I know. I didn't want to hear his so-called explanation. The urgent matter was to draw a clear line between us. The farther the better. Christian held me, inhaling the fragrance of my hair. "Lainey, just stay by my side, okay? Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." I thought Christian was a complete pervert. For example, now, he was full of deep affection, as if he couldn't live without me. But he never mentioned loving me, and he was extremely rough in bed. I hated that all my emotions were tied to him, hated that I was always moved to tears by his few words. I didn't want to be his slave anymore. In the darkness, I turned over and took the initiative to wrap my arms around his waist. Christian was somewhat incredulous. This was the first time I had yielded to him. I spoke muffledly, "Uncle, Christmas is my birthday. I want to go to Paris. Will you take me to Paris?" Without any hesitation, Christian agreed, "Okay." That night, he slept very soundly, but he didn't forget to hold me tightly, not letting me go. Actually, I didn't plan to leave. Because this would be our last time together. After this night, he and I would have nothing to do with each other anymore. Christian moved swiftly, and the day before Christmas, he and I boarded a plane to Paris. Everything was arranged with the best configurations: travel, accommodation, meals, all handled by him. If it were in the past, I might have been touched, thinking he had some feelings for me. Now I just find it laughable. The Eiffel Tower stood tall into the clouds, and countless couples and children gathered by the Seine River, their laughter and playful shouts reaching my ears. I couldn't help but look at them. Christian wrapped his arm around my shoulder and asked, "What are you looking at?" I pointed to a couple kissing not far away, looking at them. Christian pinched my cheek. "How old are you?" Not embarrassed? His eyes were smiling, as if we were really a flirting couple. Not far away, a tourist approached, holding a camera, and asked us in English, "Are you lovers?" Christian was about to answer, but I beat him to it. "No. He is my uncle." Christian's eyes darkened, but I ignored it. The man looked slightly surprised but quickly hid his emotions and continued to converse with me. "Sorry." I smiled, indicating it was okay. The man asked if we would let him take some photos of Christian and me. He could give us one for free and keep a copy for himself. This time, Christian said, "Okay. Many street artists do this," I guessed. Christian leaned close to me, slightly tilting his head to look at me. I stared at the camera, my smile deepening. I didn't give Christian a glance. The Polaroid camera spat out several photos, and after 2 minutes, the images became clear. The man asked us to choose the one we liked. I was going to take one randomly, but Christian carefully selected, looking serious. In the end, he chose the third one. He looked at me, his eyes filled with emotion. I looked at the camera, smiling happily. At dinner, Christian drank a lot. Back at the hotel, I struggled to drag him, finally getting him onto the bed, but he grabbed my arm, not letting me go. "Lainey." Christian's voice was soft after drinking, unlike his usual cold tone. He pulled me into his arms forcefully. "Uncle, you're drunk," I reminded him. Christian didn't move, like a stubborn child, refusing to let go. After a long time, I felt wetness spreading in the crook of my neck. He was crying. "I'm an illegitimate child, everyone thinks I should die." Christian held me tightly, afraid I would escape. When I was a child, my mother told me every day that I must succeed, prove myself, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. At school, people always pointed at me, gossiping behind my back, saying my mother was unscrupulous and that I was a scourge. They bullied me, not just with words but physically, locking me in a dark room, pouring cold soup on me, not letting me out for a whole day. At 20, my mother passed away. It took another 20 years before I met my biological father. Maybe it was karma. He had no other children but me. He took me home, but everyone there, including the servants, always looked at me with disdain and sometimes deliberately made things difficult for me. At that time, I finally understood that only when you become strong, only when all the power is in your hands, only when you can control others' lives and deaths, will they respect and fear you. Christian caressed my waist. So, I had to become strong, had to climb step by step to the top of the pyramid, becoming a powerful person who overlooks all beings. Over the years, I've seen too many women pretending to love me, trying every means to stay by my side, but as soon as someone richer or more powerful appeared, they would eagerly throw themselves at him. No one truly loves me. As he finished speaking, Christian slumped against me, treating me as his only reliance. "Lainey, only you. Only you love me," Christian murmured, continuously telling me about his childhood. I suddenly understood him a bit. Power, status, and money were his relentless pursuits. These things were his life, the most important things in his world. Everything else was just an accessory. As he fell asleep, I asked a question. Chris, will you marry me? His eyelashes trembled. Forget it. I laughed at myself. After all, you are still that Christian Norris. Christian was like a different person after returning home. He began to treat me gently, speaking softly, considering my feelings in everything he did, and no longer controlling my life as he used to. I knew his purpose. He didn't want me to leave him. At the same time, this was the most he could give me. The legal status of his wife would still belong to another woman. On Valentine's Day, I did something. Christian went to have dinner with Kelly, and I found my ID card and household registration book and arranged to meet Carlos at South City Park. I arrived half an hour early and sat on a bench waiting for him. Sorry, I'm late. Carlos was panting, his forehead covered in sweat. At that moment, for the first time, I felt what it was like to be valued by someone. I looked up, my eyes filled with a gentle smile, and said to him, Carlos, I'm here. He didn't respond with what's up, or a simple yeah, but with I'm here. Even if I heard this sentence 1,000 times, it would still touch my heart. I slowly stood up and met his gaze. I want to get married. Can you marry me? The cold wind blew by, carrying his response to my ears. Carlos gently stroked my head. There was no hesitation. Okay. But let's be clear, if you marry me, you can't regret it. I will secretly hide the marriage certificate so you'll never find it, and you'll never be able to divorce me. He tried to threaten me with a tough tone, as if he really wanted to make me give up the idea of divorce in the future. I thought he was adorably silly. How could I possibly divorce him? A lone boat that finds a harbor to dock at will never leave. I won't. He gave me love, and naturally, I could give him the same promise. With no one around, I stood on tiptoe and lightly touched his lips. Unexpectedly, Carlos held my head, not letting me leave. When we stopped, both of us were lightly panting. His lips were not as cold as Christian's. His lips were warm. Carlos, do you love me? I love you. In my 26th year, I finally heard these 3 words. I love you. The words Christian was stingy and unwilling to say to me. Now, someone else said them in his place. And I could love someone else. Carlos and I registered our marriage the day after Valentine's Day. Outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, he was still in a state of shock, not believing what had just happened. Lainey, pinch me. Why? He took my hand and knocked his head a few times. It's really not a dream. Carlos was extremely excited, lifting me up and spinning me around. I really married you. People were coming and going at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, and many were giving us strange looks. I patted his shoulder, put me down. Although I was scolding him, I was actually happier than he was. I had let go of the past that had caused me so much pain and torment every day. At the last moment of encasing myself in a cocoon, Carlos made me find my way back. The gloom dissipated, and a new life would finally arrive. This happiness did not last long. On the way to the bridal shop with Carlos, I received a call from Christian. Knowing about my entanglement with Christian, Carlos, although worried, still urged me, answer it. Whatever it is, I'll be with you. I pressed the answer button. Christian's tone was gloomy. Where are you? Outside. Come home immediately. With that, he hung up the phone. He didn't even leave me a chance to refuse. Carlos heard everything clearly. He held my hand. I'll go back with you. No need, I shook my head. This is between me and him, I will handle it myself. Some things must be cut off by oneself to be completely forgotten. Carlos told me he would wait for me downstairs. Before going upstairs, I hid a folding knife in my pocket. My 6th sense told me that Christian had found out something. Something about me and Carlos. Christian crossed his legs, leaned back on the sofa, and said nothing. Seeing me hesitate at the door, he lowered his voice, Come here. I didn't move. Christian repeated, I told you to come here. Uncle, if you have something to say, just say it. I can hear you from here. I told you to come here. Come to my side. Christian picked up an ashtray and threw it at my feet. The glass shards scattered all over the floor, and a small piece grazed my cheek, leaving a shallow scratch. His eyes were red with anger as he got up and grabbed my arm. He pressed me against the security door. Melanie, you better explain to me why your household registration book and ID card are not at home. Why did your location show you were at the Civil Affairs Bureau all morning? What the hell were you doing? I secretly reached for the small knife in my pocket. Uncle, since you've already guessed, why are you still asking me? I said with a smile. Aren't you going to wish me a happy wedding? Christian suddenly grabbed my neck. I knew he would do that. His surface-level gentleness was based on my recent compliance and submission. He thought I had come to my senses and was willing to stay by his side without any status or title. Willing to be a pet canary in his palm. Of course, I had come to my senses. I realized that this time I needed to escape him completely. Never to see him again in this life. As the air grew thin in my throat, I trembled and pulled out the small knife, stabbing it into his arm. The sound of the knife piercing flesh was audible. Christian winced in pain and let go. His voice trembled. You want to kill me? I don't. After the storm just now, I felt even calmer. The smell of blood filled my nose. Uncle, you need to calm down. Calm down? Christian laughed angrily, ignoring the wound on his arm, and punched the door frame beside my face. In just one morning, I couldn't keep an eye on you, and you went to marry another man? Melanie, what do you take me for? Coming and going as you please? That question should be asked by me. I stared into his eyes. Christian, what do you take me for? He was speechless, unable to respond. I'll answer you what I am. I took a deep breath, recalling our every moment. I am your bed companion, your outlet when you're unhappy, a doll you can play with at will, a pawn you can manipulate anytime, someone you would abandon first when weighing pros and cons. The former me could ignore all this. I brought it upon myself and could bear all the consequences. Now, I don't want to anymore. I am a person with flesh and blood, capable of independent thought. I feel pain and exhaustion too. From 18 to 26, I had reached my limit. Christian, from beginning to end, all I ever wanted was someone who unconditionally believes in me, favors me, and always cares about me. You can't give me these things, but naturally, someone else can. I'm not waiting for you anymore. After saying this, the burden in my heart lifted. I had trapped myself in this cocoon for 8 years. This distorted love should end. Christian listened to my words silently, not moving for a long time. Just before I pushed him away, he lowered his head, seemingly making a significant decision. Lainey, divorce him. I sneered. Christian, what right do you have to order me? Christian ignored my sarcasm. Divorce him. I'll marry you. Time froze for a few seconds. Christian, why should I believe you? A man who values power, status, and money as his life, how could he possibly let me be Mrs. Norris? I'm not lying to you. Christian grabbed my arm, blood dripping down to my wrist. If you divorce him now, I can take you to get a marriage certificate immediately. What about Kelly? Mentioning Kelly, Christian fell silent. I knew him too well. Saying he would marry me was just a momentary impulse. He hadn't thought about how to handle the relationship between Kelly and me. He was afraid I would run away. In the end, it was just that Christian felt Carlos had taken his place in my heart. He didn't love me at all. His obsession drove him mad. Christian, you don't love me at all. You only love yourself. The 10-minute deadline was almost up. I was afraid Carlos would really call the police, so I thought I'd better resolve the matter at hand quickly. Christian, I will move out. Thank you for taking care of me these past 10 years. From now on, unless it's something important, let's not see each other again. I opened the door, ready to leave. Christian grabbed my hand. His touch was gentle, no longer as rough as it used to be. Lainey, I love you. He finally said those 3 words. The 3 words I had longed for. Perhaps Christian thought that by saying this, he could make me stay. In the hallway, the sensor light turned on. I turned slightly and gradually freed myself from his grasp. Christian's eyes darkened. Christian, you actually had many chances to say those words. If you had realized your feelings earlier and had the courage to say them, our ending would not be like this. I gave you 3 chances. The first time, I asked you if you would marry me if I got pregnant. The second time, before I went to find Carlos, I asked you if you could love me. The third time, on the night before I left Paris, I still asked you if you would marry me. 3 times, you remained silent and avoided the question. Christian, a match only needs to be struck once to ignite, but its burn time is short. Once it burns out, there's no more flame. So, let it go. My match has burned out. The alarm rang, 10 minutes were up. I resolutely turned around. The elevator arrived, I pressed the button for the first floor, and made eye contact with Christian. The elevator doors slowly closed. In the last moment, I saw him form the words with his mouth. "I'm sorry." I transferred the store to Riley, telling her I was leaving. Riley was reluctant to part, her eyes reddened. "Boss, remember to contact me when you get to the new place." I smiled and gently pinched her chubby cheeks, saying, "I will, but now, you are the boss." Carlos took me away from the city where I had lived for 10 years. I told him I liked the small towns. Foggy weather, small boats on the river, houses along the shore. He took me to settle in the south. One day, I received a package. The sender was C. Inside was YSL's Libra perfume. I sprayed a bit on myself, and the fragrance filled the whole living room. As I smelled the scent, I examined the package box. I already had the answer in my heart. Christian never allowed me to wear makeup before. Until I left him, I had barely touched any cosmetics. Perhaps he felt guilty for depriving me of a young girl's dream. So he wanted to make up for it. The YSL brand has a phrase that explains it. "I love you. You are free." I believe he understood. That's why he sent me this package. The aroma of food wafted from the kitchen, overshadowing the perfume scent. Carlos poked his head out. "Wash your hands, it's time to eat." I put the perfume away, locked it in the drawer with a key. Then, I threw the key into the trash can. As the sun set, I turned around and smiled with relief. "I'm coming."